What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets React, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction.
Yes.
Super excited about this video, guys. If you're new to us and we're new to you, make sure you scroll down,
hit that subscribe button,
and turn on the post notification bell
because we're on the road to 100K.
And we cannot get there without you guys, alright? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Let's begin. First off, what is the difference between the UK and Great Britain? Well, Great Britain is essentially the big island and the largest part of the country, made up of three constituent countries, England, Scotland, and Wales. You've probably heard of these three. And yes, they are within themselves considered separate countries. They have their own cultures, traditions, councils, parliaments, and so on. Yet they are still under the overarching authority of the UK, so it's like three countries that report to one system. England has 9 regions made up of 48 counties. Scotland has 32 council areas, and Wales has 22 principal areas or county boroughs. Scotland basically became a part of the UK in 1707. Some say it was more like 100 years prior to that when James VI of Scotland became the King of England, which opened up the door. But the point is, it's been going on for centuries. Wales joined earlier in 1536 when King Henry VIII enforced a bill that joined the two. Both Scotland and Wales are Celtic in their roots, so they are essentially the cousins of the Irish. They even have their own languages. However, Scots and Scottish Gaelic are it's kind of like a dying language. Few people speak it. Whereas Wales fares a little better in the linguistic maintenance department, as about a 1/6 to a 1/5 of the Welsh population still speaks Welsh pretty fluently. So that is Great Britain. It is just the geographic term for the conglomeration of England, Scotland, and Wales. Depending on who you ask, some might say this also applies to the small islands off the coast of the constituents, such as, but not limited to, the Isle of Wight, the Isle of Anglesey, the Orkney, Hebrides, and Shetland Islands off the coast of Scotland, and so on. All except for this one, but we'll get to that in a bit. From there, we have Northern Ireland. No one knows exactly what to call it. Some say it's a country, some say it's a province, some say it's a region. They can't even decide if they have an official flag or not. But the point is, Northern Ireland is the last part of the puzzle that makes up the geographical UK, or the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. It's in the name. This is the most recent finalized addition to the kingdom, completed in 1921. We kind of explained a lot of this in the Ireland episode, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but basically the majority of Northern Irish people are descendants of Protestant British colonials that came in the 12th century. They have 11 district councils, and they kind of have this weird home rule system where people can choose to either have Irish or British or both citizenship, stuff like that. Now we get to the fun stuff, all of the things outside of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now,
okay, so the people who can choose between the citizenships, I know just us thinking, we kind of think similar. We don't think that similar, but we think similar. And I feel like we would choose both just for the benefits of both. So I feel like that's a good question. The people who are there,
right,
did you choose both, or your parents chose both, or however that worked? Why did you choose both? Or if you chose one versus the other, why did you choose that one?
Yeah, and I think some people could have grown to the part where, you know, there has to be one-sided with this, and then some had to grow with being both. So again, that's a great question to put into.
Yeah, we'd love to know that.
the UK has 16 or 17 territories, depending on how you look at one of them, divided into 3 different types in 3 oceans, 2 seas, and 1 separate continental landmass. Let's start with the closest entity, the 3 crown dependencies, which are islands that do not belong to any of the constituent nations. These islands probably have some of the highest levels of autonomy within the areas that fall under the constitutional jurisdiction of the UK. They have their own parliaments, legal systems, and the right to self-determination. They even have their own banking authority that allows them to print out their own variant of the pound sterling that's on par with the British pound. These are the Isle of Man and the Bailiwicks of Jersey and Guernsey. What the is a bailiwick? It's basically an area that is governed by a bailiff, which in the British definition is like a judicial manager, meaning the person in charge must be a qualified lawyer appointed by the crown and holds the office until retirement. In that regard, the Isle of Man is just governed by a lieutenant governor. So in a nutshell, the Isle of Man is another Celtic-based entity. The demonym of people here is Manx. They have their own language as well. At one point, they were under Norway, but then the Norwegians sold it back to the King of Scotland.
Did someone say Norway?
Hey, it's Jonas from the Sweden episode. Remember him? How you been? What have you been up to?
Well, I live here now.
Oh yeah, man, a lot of people have been living in this house. Jersey and Guernsey, or the Channel Islands, on the other hand, are unique areas that have a fusion British, Norman, French culture. They even have their own kind of fusion languages, which are kind of like dialects of the ancient Norman language, which was like a predecessor of French. And many of the people in the islands are bilingual with French as well, due to the proximity and regular interaction with France. It's like right there. From there, we move on to the rest of the BOTS, or British Overseas Territories. Within Europe, we have Gibraltar, the small peninsula attached to the southern part of Spain, as well as Akrotiri and Deucalion, exclaves languages within the island
I
of
mean,
Cyprus.
besides being taught different languages, I think we'll be bilingual if our states next to us was speaking like a whole different language. Because we would have to learn it. So I get why they are bilingual.
Yeah, but I feel like kind of we do. I feel like if we grew up in southern Texas, well, no, because I know people who's from Houston and they're not bilingual. But I feel like our schools push it.
Yeah, they pushing us.
Just
Yeah.
not push it enough.
I mean, because we don't, everyone main language is English.
Right. Like in Louisiana, we have a lot of French immersion classes and Spanish immersion
We do.
schools as well.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it depends on region, you know?
Yeah.
Cyprus. We already explained these in the Cyprus and Spain episodes, but basically, Gibraltar was captured in 1704 during the Spanish War of Succession, and then it was ceded in 1713 under the Treaty of Utrecht, known for its big-ass rock and macaque monkeys and a weird airport that crosses traffic with cars, and the people even speak their own dialect of Spanish called llanito. They even issued their own currency variant of the pound called the Gibraltar pound. The exclaves of Akrotiri and Dhekelia are basically leftover military bases with some extra land retained after Cyprus gained independence after being a British colony. They use euros here instead of pounds. Now we go to the Caribbean. Turks and Caicos, the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, the Cayman Islands, and Montserrat. Basically, these islands share a very similar culture and demographic vibe to the other Caribbean island nations, you know, like calypso music, carnival, scotch bonnets, and half of all their food, and they're all tax havens. At one point, 3 of these, Montserrat, Turks and Caicos, and Cayman Islands, actually ceded to become a part of the short-lived West Indies Federation before breaking up again, and then they voted to remain under British authority. The British Virgin Islands and Turks and Caicos use the US dollars as their currencies. Anguilla was once joined with St. Kitts and Nevis until they broke away in the 50s. They're like, nah. They, along with Montserrat, use the East Caribbean dollar as their currency. The Cayman Islands have their own Cayman Islands dollar, which has parity with the US dollar. And also Montserrat, they had that huge volcanic eruption that destroyed their old capital, Plymouth, and then they had to move it down south to Braids. You can still visit and see the cool aftermath. Now we move on to the Atlantic, starting with Bermuda. Bermuda is basically the UK's Hawaii. It has a tropical climate, it's expensive, it has the wealthiest inhabitants out of all the territories with an average annual salary around 100K. It produces the highest nominal GDP at somewhere around 6.5 billion annually. It's a big deal. It's also home to the UK's most important Atlantic naval port, and they use their own Bermudian dollar as currency, which has parity with the US dollar. From there, we have the
Hold on, before we keep going on and on and on. So my question is, and this may seem like a silly question. Silly question.
Silly question. Okay.
So, our Virgin Islands, we can travel there without a passport, but it's not recommended because you're going in the air, right? Because of the location. I'm asking this because of the location. Is it the same with you all traveling to the overseas territory? Do you need a passport to travel there?
I think they should. I mean, but like, I don't know. We had like
I do know,
No, go ahead.
I do know that traveling in the European
Right,
Union,
that's what I was finna say. Yeah.
Y'all don't need a passport.
They don't need one. And they go to, like, all the way over.
But the location, let's say you get stuck in Africa and you don't have your passport and you want to come down to the Caribbean.
Boarding again, they would like permit it. Like you would need your passport. So
yeah. So I'm answering my own question. as
kind of, but they may have a different way of approaching it. You know what I'm saying? Because they don't necessarily need it, so they may have another level of card or something they can just use.
Okay. Well, what about the one Gibraltar? They may not need it for there, right? Because it's so close.
Maybe.
Answer that question. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Southern Atlantic island territories of St. Helena, Ascension, and Tristan da Cunha. Altogether, collectively, they only make up a little bit over 6,000 people in all 3 of these, about 70% of which live on St. Helena. Now, these 3 used to be one unit called St. Helena and Dependencies until 2009 when a new constitutional ruling gave all 3 separate equal territory status. Basically, they were discovered by the Portuguese, hence the Portuguese name Tristan da Cunha. St. Helena, which is also where Napoleon was exiled that one time, has its own bank that creates St. Helenian pounds on parity currently with pound sterlings. Tristan da Cunha is actually made up of 6 islands. Only Tristan da Cunha is inhabited, and it is the only active volcanic island of the group. Now we go way down south to the controversial Falkland Islands and South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands. For one, you gotta know these are all disputed with Argentina. Argentina calls these the Islas Malvinas. They even name things after these islands in their country, like schools and whatever, stadiums. And at one point they even put the map of the islands on the 50 peso banknote. And it was the site of that war that happened in the 80s where like 900 people died. So yeah, lots happened here. As for the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, these are temporarily inhabited glacier islands, mostly for research and military patrol in the Antarctic areas. They comprise of the largest island, South Georgia, about 106 miles long, 170 kilometers, with multiple bays and fjords. Then you have the 11 Sandwich Islands, which are much colder in climate and some are volcanically active. And all around these areas, you can find fascinating endemic wildlife and plant species. Penguins! From there, we move up to a little warmer climate in the British Indian Ocean Territory, which, like Akrotiri and Deucalion, is a military base inhabited with about 3,000 temporary stationed military personnel, mostly British and American, on the Chagos Archipelago just south of the Maldives. Now, this is kind of a controversial one because it is the site of the forced relocation of a couple hundred Chagosian people from the 60s and 70s. They moved them to Mauritius and the UK in order to build the military bases. For those you don't know, Chagosians are basically a Creole group originally brought over by the French as slaves that are now mostly African descended with some Asian, South Asian mixed in. They even speak their own Creole, which is French-based. This is a whole other topic we could discuss, but we don't really have too much time for it. I recommend researching it on your own time if you're interested. And finally, we cut to the other side of the world and hit the Pitcairn Islands, made up of 4 volcanic islands, Henderson, Ducie, Oeno, and the only inhabited one, Pitcairn, which only has about 50 people. Now, this is an interesting one. All of these 50-ish people are pretty much descendants of the Bounty mutineers and Tahitians from the 18th century. They even speak their own Creole language known as Pitcairn. Only 2 people have been born on the island prior to 2012, and in 2005, 2 people, a married couple, migrated and obtained citizenship. There is 1 school. The electricity is run off of a diesel generator that goes from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. They use the New Zealand dollar, and the only way to arrive is by longboat to ferry people between anchored ships to the coast. There is no natural harbor. This is considered one of the most difficult places to go to in the world. And it's a place to go if you really appreciate isolation. And finally, depending on how you look at it, the UK has a claim on Antarctica, despite the Antarctic Treaty, which states that no one can really claim any part of Antarctica. This slice wedge of land includes the Antarctic Peninsula, which also has areas that are also disputed with Argentina and Chile. This is where the British go when they want to explore and research the Antarctic, which makes sense because it's just kind of a hop skip away from the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands. So so there you go. That's basically all of the UK overseas dependencies and territories. 3 crown dependencies, overseas territories, Great Britain, which has 3 constituent countries, plus Northern Ireland, which collectively makes the UK. It's a lot. And we're not even going to get into the Commonwealth realm because that's a little bit irrelevant, but it's kind of tied into the UK because it's like they were former colonies, but then they still maintained a little bit of a tie to the UK, and they're connected, and they still claim the UK monarch as their technical head of state, but the monarch doesn't have power over them. But hey, that's basically how you break it down. So there you go. When the UK episode comes up, I'm just gonna say click on this video so you can just
So I need to know, like, when it comes to the schools, y'all, how do y'all get around all this stuff? Because I know the teaching has to be like what's the focus? Because there's so much to learn. Yeah. And it's like right there.
So many different histories.
Everything is right there connected to y'all. So it's like, how do y'all teach this? Like, do y'all tell them the islands as well when y'all bringing it up? Or, I don't know.
But also, now you're making me question how long is school there? Because we've even heard, like, in certain places around the United States, like private schools, it goes for the entire year. Public school only go for, 9-10 months out of the year. So, like, yeah, what is y'all school system like? And we're sure, like, y'all got your own way of teaching things.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but we're curious about that, and we want to know. All
and
right?
again, that passport thingy, because I know the movements and everything. Y'all can go wherever y'all want to go and stuff, but does it, like, I think that was something you was asking about a passport.
Yeah, and I feel like that was, I was asking for my perspective, but then I got to think of their perspective. Here, it's like half and half. Half people have passports, like have it, and half people don't. So we could travel to Hawaii.
Right.
It's a state, but although we're traveling so far, most people would take that risk. Like, let's say if the plane got diverted to somewhere in South America, what would you do if you're going to Hawaii, but the plane got diverted to South America? You're risking deportation.
Yeah, you need a passport.
So half of us have passports, half of us don't. But in Europe, majority of the people have passports. So that probably wouldn't even be a problem to them. So I was asking from my point of view.
Wow.
But let us know that. Let us know that. We hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like to support the channel that way, as well as our reaction request form is in our description box below. We'll see you soon.
Peace.